You in is it Western Australia? In the whereabouts are you over there?
I'm in Perth.
Perth, that's it. The biggest isolated state in the world, apparently. Is that right?
It's the most isolated city in the world, yeah.
City in the world, that's it. How are you guys doing on this glorious Sunday?
Well, awesome, apart from it's 11:30 for me now, so I'm knackered.
Yeah.
Want to eat, but other than that, I've been looking forward to this.
Well, you can drop some science and then we can pack you off to bed in about 45 minutes to an hour. Tim, your first time on the show, isn't it? From memory, this is your first time on?
Yeah.
Do you want to give the audience an introduction on yourself, who you are, what you do, etc.?
Yeah, sure. So I'm Tim. I live in Perth. I'm an emergency doctor, so accident emergency or ER doctor, and I've been doing that for about 20 years now. I've also really passionate about lifestyle medicine, and particularly as it relates to kids with anxiety, depression, but also as it relates to adults as well. So I help a lot of people who've just got problems with health issues that aren't really conforming to normal traditional medicine as we see it.
Yeah, that makes sense, and we can start to get into that. We'll dig deep on that as we get through. Kata, I mean, this is about the millionth time you've been on the show, but still, please give the audience a little bit of background on yourself.
Well, I feel like I'm on the show with different credentials today.
Yes. So what credentials? You're not
full-on clinical psychologist.
Yes. So not as an Amazon seller today. You're not representing Amazon.
No, although it's very related, because I have found that a lot of the issues that when I covered today enhance with the particular lifestyle that we may follow as Amazon sellers. So yeah, clinical psychologists, several masters, kids. I have a passion team, which is where we became such close friends when we met, to just make children happy. And we both believe in the approach that the only way to do that is by having happy parents. So and other bits, obviously, but mainly that approach, which is slightly different than mainstream. So yeah, we're here today just to discuss a little bit of what's being covered already and see and discuss the science behind it and why is it so important to actually get the right mindset on that as well.
Sounds good. I mean, obviously this is about mindset, and we've talked about mental health on here quite a bit. From one angle, have we? What would be good to get from you and Tim is the mental health of children who are also going through COVID, because they don't always get the same level of voice, like because the parents may talk about it, but the children don't. Do you have conversations with your children, and how do you go about it in terms of their mental health?
Oh, my kids have been, because they're kids of two doctors. My wife's a doctor as well. We both work at the same hospital, and through COVID, we've gone through a lot of the same issues that the rest of the world have. And my kids have had two sides. They've seen our side where we've been speaking the truth and telling them exactly what's really happening, and then they've seen the other side, the mainstream media side, which has been scary for them. And they have just seen death and destruction pretty much. And that's what the mainstream media have been telling them. And so in terms of fear mongering, they've been certainly fearful. So we've had to counter that. But what I've seen, not so much in my kids, because my kids were allowed to go to school, but in so many other kids where all the schools shut down, they were stuck at home. And just being away from their friends, losing that connection, being able to see their friends in person, really had a massive impact on them. And we saw a huge number of kids coming through the department who were complaining of symptoms of anxiety and just unease almost, and weren't themselves, couldn't put it down to anything, but it was clear it was because they were just scared of their surroundings and weren't connecting, weren't playing, they weren't running around, they weren't doing all the normal things kids do. So it had a massive impact. We saw it.
Makes sense. Kat, what about you?
Yeah, 100%. I'm in the particular situation where I got to experience the sort of scenario in the United States where I was until a few weeks ago. and now I moved to England, which is completely different experience. I feel that my daughter was very exposed to having everything and access to diversity, which was one of the main things that I am now fearful of for the future of our children's. To be clustered with her neighbors alone, and even that was a little bit controversial, but she's a very social being, so having taken that away from her would have been detrimental for her, you know, late teen and young adult skills. She's, you know, between 8 and 12, that key stage where they're developing the brains, and they're just getting everything they're going to become in the early years of adulthood. So it was quite interesting to see that the fear went away when we came to England, because in America, in my personal opinion, there is a lot of information and a lot more politics involved with the virus itself than there is over here. And you know, just trying to create the space to talk about it, to ask, so what do you think? What have you heard? What kind of advert are coming to you between your TikToks videos and what sort of thing? Because sometimes we're not aware that kids are exposed to a lot more than we like to think. And this is not something, for me, in my opinion, team is seeing the kids that are suffering from it right now. I can see, and I was actually discussing this with a few of the girls in our private chat, in a year's time, we're going to see kids that were clustered with kids of their own kind, mostly of their own color, mostly of their own culture. And we are going almost back in history here, because those who will have access to the same resources will be the one clustering together. And that's a very scary thing to think about. Yeah. And something that I think
we've come such a long way for diversification for it to then go back the other way. Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah,
and it's, you know, it's a natural process, hence why we as parents have the duty to pay attention to those little things and actually bring those onto the table as well in whatever mean we can.
Yeah,
that's where I am anyway, with my own daughter.
Sorry for interrupting, but you say it's important for us parents to do that, and so Kirsty and I made a real attempt to maintain normality in their life. And so our kids, throughout the 2 or 3 months of that sort of quasi lockdown that we had here, they were still getting really active. We were taking them on loads of massively long bike rides. We, making sure they weren't cooped up in the house. We were making sure they were doing things as a family a lot, because they clearly weren't allowed to go out. The idea of them being on their devices while we were doing something else was a no-no. It was us and them interacting, and just that family unit coming together. I truly believe that that's helped my kids, and I think a lot of other kids who were able to sort of navigate the last few months, and they needed that connection at home with their parents.
What for someone who's seen a broad range of children come into your practice and stuff, what things can parents do to make their lives better for their children? Because every parent will guide their kids as the way they see fit, right? And everyone has a different approach. Doesn't mean it's a right way, doesn't mean a wrong way. Obviously, there is certain things, there's law-breaking things, but generally on the whole, no one likes to be critiqued about how they look after their children, and that's for themselves. But if you were to, parents are also blindsided. I'm a parent, we're all parents. We're blindsided. We're in the middle of this COVID thing. For a better word for it, the novelty wears off of stuff, right? So you're at home all the time, you're going to each other. We had what I called a family sit down earlier on the week, just because I think we were off frequency, members in the household. I believe in communication, and we got that back on track. But things can manifest and change and stuff. And sometimes you can miss stuff. Like I know with my daughter, I think her being in the house quite a lot was getting to a stage where she's getting to a state of depression, of like being in the house all the time, as you would expect. So it's like, right, this has got to change. This is why we've upped her pocket money. We've given, like, she's got to go out and do all these different things with her friends, and we actually took a place in the diary to book all this stuff in, because there's only so much FaceTime and stuff that they can do, and which kids are doing every day, as you know. But what things can some parents do that may have they've forgotten about whilst being in lockdown and bad habits reform or whatever? What are some of the things that you think that they could do to make it a better place for their children in the house? Start with you, Tim.
Well, just to take a step back slightly, the reason that I got really interested in helping children with anxiety was because we see so many of them now. And I've seen kids as young as 6 with suicidal thoughts, which is horrible. Now, these are children who are from decent backgrounds. They're not being bullied at school. They've got none of the...
Sorry, Tim, just to be clear, in case my daughter listens back and she's thinking, Dad, what are you doing? She never had any suicidal thoughts in that. I was pointing towards like being in the house so long could lead to depression. She's not depressed, but could, so just to clear that up so I don't get a whack on the backside. Yeah.
Of course. But we in my practice, we're seeing lots of young children like this. And through years of talking to parents, it became really clear that it was just the fundamentals that they were getting wrong. They weren't doing it on purpose, but just the ability for these kids to connect with human connection rather than digital, because kids have started looking, they're on screens constantly. And there's a huge amount of research now showing us very clearly that screen time is causing mental health issues in children. Nutrition is huge. So in terms of nutrition and children and adults, but especially children, children eat exactly what we give them. They don't choose. It's up to the parents to decide what children eat, and children and parents who really want to do the best they can. And there is an entire food environment outside that's essentially blindsiding all of us in terms of what they think is healthy and what's not healthy. So nutrition is huge. You talked about getting the kids to run around and be outside. Exercise is massive for kids. Now you can make children be sedentary for just a day or two, and they will get superly anxious. I mean, how many times have you said to yourself, you've got to get these kids outside because they're driving me up the wall. We've got to get them running around. And as soon as they have a run around or a bounce on a trampoline, they come back in and they feel great. And sleep. And I think you've spoken a lot about sleep, but sleep in children is so crucially important. And the last decade has seen sleep decimated in young children. And young children's health has been decimated as a result, because right now you've got kids who are on their screens till late. They're not then able to sleep. They're getting up early. They're texting in the middle of the night. So you've got all these things, and I don't think any of these things are new to you or most of your viewers. But in terms of what parents can do, it's up to the parents to model that behavior. So if you or parents are putting their kids to bed, coming downstairs, having a glass of wine, crashing in front of the TV, going to bed late, waking up, tired. Kids are seeing all of that. And so I think if parents really want to help their children, it's to model that type of behavior that they hope to see in their kids. And we can speak a lot about what that sort of behavior should be. But I think for me, that's by far the most important thing.
Makes sense. Kat, I'm going to bring you in. I'm just going to read out some of the messages, and then if you don't mind answering the same question as well. Hey guys, love Tim and Kat so much. Thank you for everything you do. Tiff's back. Good morning, Tiff. Hope you're well. I see your post on Facebook. I look forward to seeing a full recovery. I pray for you. Dr. Tim knows everything. I agree 100%. We'll give away our TV, and we keep no sugars or processed food in the house. My 4-year-old is full of energy. The last thing he needs is sugar. I agree. I don't have control over what my daughter eats, so I've given her the choice of doing that. She does eat some processed foods. I'm not going to ram that down her throat, for a better word, in terms of what she can and what she can't eat. She's 14. She's a young woman. She's got her own mind. But what I will do is guide her, and I will help her through that. And then sometimes it's like your advice comes from the stumbling blocks, not from, you shouldn't eat that because it's got sugar in. That doesn't work. It normally comes from an artifact of something else where you give them advice if they're not happy about something, But Kat, sorry, go back to you, please, if you give your opinion on what parents could do to improve. You still there, Kat?
Yeah, well, team covers sort of what children should be receiving in terms of guidance. And I'm going to refer a little bit as how as parents can help ourselves be a better example and guide through action. Because I'm the first one to say I'm guilty of had enough. COVID has done me. I need me time. I cannot work and parent and teach and do all of that at the same time. So have whatever the hell you want. Seriously, just go, just stacking, you know. But
Yeah.
the thing is, what will happen when I give that social freedom to my daughter and she goes to a drawer, to a pantry, to whatever, and the options within that are still within the healthy range, she's
Yeah.
still going to make a good choice. Now, I haven't personally done that. I'm preaching here because that's what I intend to do now that the move and all that just went away. However, I can see the change. These weeks that I have been moving countries have been all over the place. I've been gone to bed before her. And as a result, I see her bratty, cranky, annoyed, not happy, you know. And us as parents, ourselves, need to get a system because this isn't going away anytime soon. We don't know, right? We don't have control over what's going to happen. So I was thinking this morning, what can I put in place to, as a parent, be in a happy position so by the time I give her my attention, it's actually good quality one, right? We can go for a walk and I'm actually going to be connected to her rather than pending on my phone and my business while I'm walking the dog with her alongside me, right?
You mean being
So one of
present?
the
Yeah.
things is like we need to, even though we're going to be home, you know, things like the Pomodoro approach where you have block of times to work and have that break. You're not going to be going home after work because you are, you know, confined to a same space and you have to learn to share that space, much like you mentioned earlier on. There's going to have to be a system in place where you can stop working and be present with the family, even if it's within the same physical space. And I think that that's going to be an exercise that you as a parent and we all as parents need to do, just to stop and think, okay, what can I do to model that behavior? And within the freedom of choice that I believe children should have, what options that will that freedom in truly, you know, be made of? Am I just going to really be a careless parent, or I'm going to at least make an effort to provide a range of things within, giving them the social full sense of they're still making it their own choices, you know? I'm not taking it away. I'm just
Yeah.
offering better options,
Yeah.
following him's advice.
Makes
So yeah,
sense.
a system is most definitely what I think we should be started to implement if you haven't done already at this time, just for little things and little nuances of everyday life in the same space to go away.
Cool. To follow on from this, it's definitely hard to keep cool with kids at home all day. When we parents are stressed out and overwhelmed because of the craziness year, do you guys have some tips for that? I think one of the first things is, and we'd all normally reach for it, not that I drink it, but everyone wants, get to the end of a long day, you sit down and you crack open that bottle of wine. I don't drink wine, but let's just say it's vodka or something else. And I think when you get into that routine, and that's compounded effect that you get is that, like, you want to release at the end of the day. Probably the best release you could get is some exercise from my point of view. But equally, when you're stressed and overwhelmed, you don't necessarily want to do that. You actually don't want to do anything, do you? You want to park your ass down on the sofa, pour a glass of wine. But I think what happens in lockdown, I think I've seen this happen with people. It gets too much, and then you're doing that every day, and that compounded effect from the alcohol, even if it's like one or two glasses, you still get that little wake up the next morning without the spring in your step. So I think it's very important there. I think that's the most common thing. So to answer that question from my point of view is get out and have a walk. But with the British weather isn't always great, and you may not feel like it, but it's forcing yourself through that barrier. The worst thing you can do is sit down and crack open some alcohol on a nightly basis. What guys would you give as tips here as parents and kids driving you crazy all day?
You know, I'm going to just agree with you there, Danny. Getting out and doing any form of movement. So it's not about a walk or exercise. Yeah. It could be dancing in the kitchen. It could be running around outside playing tag with your kids. It's just something where you get your muscles moving, because the science behind muscles and movement is outstanding. You know, we evolved to move, and when we move our muscles, we know scientifically that we get a whole bunch of chemicals flooding our system, and not just endorphins and adrenaline, but you get endocannabinoids, you know, firing up your system. You get dopamine firing up your system.
Serotonin levels raise. Yeah.
Everything. And so there's a whole bunch of things. You know, if you go back in evolution, we, you know, going to get some food 200,000 years ago was like doing an ultra marathon. So you got rewarded for moving a lot. And that's the same now. So if you're feeling overwhelmed, I really think get up out of your chair, go outside, do something fun.
Yeah, makes sense. I mean, a lot of people listening to the show, and us included, we're in a different position, but I always think back to the single parents on a council estate on the 15th floor with 3 children and a broken lift. That must be horrific for them in lockdown. There's very little much you can do there. Obviously, you can drag your kids up and down the stairs, but when I think of that, I think of how lucky I am. So I'm always grateful for where I am in life. So, and it's very difficult for people sometimes because they're in different situations. I think another thing that with the parent as well is that if they can create that distance, that space to give to them, they're better equipped to deal with their children. Like the Facebook user, it says it come up here, but the person who asked the question, after that compounded effect of being driven mad day after day after day after day, and you don't get the space for yourself, you're never going to be able to recover that and give back to your family to make that better. So it's always going to get worse and worse. So what would you suggest there to create distance without upsetting other members of the family? Kat? Such a delay here, Kat. Did you hear my question?
Shall I jump in?
Yeah, go on, you jump in, Tim. And she keeps nodding, but I'm not sure she can hear me.
You know, I think in terms of trying to get that distance.
Well, in answer to that, and also, I'm so sorry, my internet. Yeah, I did. Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Yes, okay. Can hear. Sorry. That is like 5 or 6 seconds. Kat, come back in and out the room. That's it. Tim, do you want to fill in this question until Kat comes back?
Yeah. So I'd say I think to be a better parent for your kids, you do need that space, and you need to treat yourself first. And just to give my own personal example, I can't speak for anyone else, but the first thing in the morning I do is when I get up, I go to my gym. I've got a small gym in my garage. Yeah. My kids, since they were born, they know where to find Dad in the morning. If they come and want to play with me or do anything first thing in the morning, they don't bother. They just know. They'll come, they'll sit in the gym. And my wife knows as well, that's my 1 hour of the day. Yeah. I don't exercise for the whole hour, but I just do something for myself. And the rest of the time, I devote to my work and kids. And it helps me. And I see other people, and including my wife sometimes. Sometimes she gives way more to the kids, and she feels frustrated sometimes because she, not with the kids, but with her ability to look after herself. And sometimes I think, just take some time out for yourself, recharge, and then you'll be, guns blazing. So I would suggest whatever works for you in your own home, but self-care is so important, especially right now if you're cooped up in a house with kids. You need that. Yeah. That makes sense. Another good one is the Wim Hof thing is cold showers as well. That doesn't repair everything, but it'll be a nice shock to your system. It gets your cellular system going as well. You can do it over a period of time. It doesn't cost a lot of money, and the actions from that, the well-being from that, is pretty fast. You can literally, you start off in about 15 seconds on a cold shower. I mean, you do it slowly, but there's some of the things that can start to activate your system as well to make you feel better. Kat, can you hear us now? And is there a 15-second delay still?
No, I can hear you. Can you hear me now? Yep.
Yeah. Do you want to answer that question from before then?
There is a delay.
Yeah.
Yes, I was just going to say that one thing that hasn't been mentioned is the fact that, sometimes you don't feel like going for that walk. Sometimes you don't feel like having that movement. Sometimes it's just bigger than you, right? And at those times, you just have to give yourself grace and realize that maybe tomorrow it will work. Maybe tomorrow your willpower will work and will kick in. And what you can do in the meantime is to go to your child's height, look at them in the eye and say, you know what? Today's been a really difficult day. I am very, very tired. This doesn't matter the age, whatever age they are, still tell them, mommy or daddy is not feeling very well. I'm stressed. It's not your doing. I'm just trying to work through it. So how about you just don't take it personal. If I'm a little bit loud, if I answer in the wrong way, it's not your fault. It's my doing, and I apologize for it. But I'm very, very stressed, and I'm going to try better tomorrow. And guess what? 99% of the times, kids look at you and they say, that's okay. And they even try to help. Okay, sometimes they can still be little shits, but most of the time they actually do have the ability to empathize with you because they also feel that way sometimes. It's just that we never ask them. So kids are so overrated. They can truly understand and support you if only you were to make them part of what's going on with you and give them also the grace to be helpful and to support you, because that empowers them and that truly, truly nurtures the relationship they're going to grow up to have with you. And we often just overlook that and we think they don't need an explanation or they don't need an apology, and they do. And that pays massive benefits. When I tell my 9-year-old daughter, you know what, I had enough today. I don't want to be rude to you. I just need some me time. Can you please read a book? And tomorrow make sure that I put some time aside to spend together. And that 100% of the time works. She's happy with that compromise, and she's happy that I even told her why.
Yeah, I think the under 4s and under 5s, that's a bit more difficult. But with us, we've got our children are a bit older, so it's difficult. Like what you said there was great advice, but it's difficult with the really, really young ones. I think that's the toughest place to be in. I know some sellers, who have got young children and they feel they're only going to get like a couple of hours a day window because they've got 2 and then they're rotating. But even when you're rotating, you can't get deep work done. You can't finish those key tasks. You just snatch it in these little windows, and often you're tired and stuff, and that becomes difficult for super young children. So Tim, what advice would you give in that consideration? Kids under 5 or under?
So if you ask kids really what they want, and if you get away from cars and trains, they will say that they'll say that they want to spend time with their parents, number one, and they want their parents to be happy, number 2. Now, they're the 2 commonest things kids will actually say if they really are telling the truth. And spending time with kids means you have to be spending time with them without your phone and being attentive to them. So if you've only got 2 hours a day, to be with your kids, just make sure those 2 hours a day are purely with your kids. You've got to have
it's the other way around. Sorry, 2 hours a day to get their work done because of the overlap, because the kids are young and need entertaining. Right. So they need to be present in their mother times, but they're only getting a handful of good quality work done. So sorry, what's the question? Yeah, so what would you do in that situation where parents are trying to run businesses, but the kids are young and they're only finding to get 2 hours of good work in a day? What can they do to extend those work hours, but still be, for their children, still there for their children, still making sure their children's okay, but that window, extending that window to get more work done. Because at the end of the day, if they don't get that work done, you haven't got a business, you can't support the kids. So there has to be a balance there, Oh, there has to be a balance there. Maybe get a nanny. Yeah, but in COVID, up until a few weeks ago, it's tough. Yeah. That's a challenging question for me. I honestly don't know. My kids were at school throughout all of this, because they were, kids of doctors. So a lot of friends of ours had that same challenge, and I don't think any of our friends solved that. They were all challenged by one thing I just thought about. We can come back to is nutrition. If you're filling your kids with sugar and it's all processed food from a young age, they're just going to be flying around like lunatics, aren't they? Mm-hmm. But if they are eating healthily, they may be more balanced and less issues with them in terms of keeping their attention on things. I don't know. Yeah, no, that's absolutely true. If the nutrition is huge, but I think if you're talking about young kids, 3, 4, and 5, almost all of them
want attention, don't they? They want to be playing with someone. They rarely can be on their own. You know, an hour at a time, maybe. So, I think that I don't know the answer to that question, Danny.
That's a tough one, yeah. Kat, do you have anything to add here which could ease the pain for people?
I'm going to be a bit of a devil's advocate for children here, because I'm of the opposite idea. I don't think kids under 5 are too young to be explained things. I don't think that using big words to very little children as young as 18 months and up, it's a moot point. I actually think that that's one of the reasons why I was always what I call a selfless mother. I brought up my kids to respect the fact that they're human beings and I'm a human being too, and mommy needs their time. Mommy needs her time as much as they do theirs. And then we all get what we need. And she knows that when I just put my hand up, that's a hard stop. She knows that I am, whether in the middle of something very important right now that I must not be disturbed, or she needs to wait her turn and come back in a minute, and most of the time she'll ask me and actually now be interested in what I was doing. Of course, that took a lot of repetition and modeling behavior when she was young. And what do I mean by modeling behavior is, boring as it is, just be repetitive. Every time they interrupt you, or like you do every time they kick someone, just say again, wait a minute, mommy's turn now, finish your game, then you can work. And it's a job in itself, but it's one that pays off a lot faster than we like to believe. And it's one that will give both parts. And I speak on this more than a professional point of view, from the part that I was a single mother to my eldest. And then with Lyra, Matt was deployed at times. So I was a single mom for a while too there. So, and I had nobody. I was in a new country, didn't speak the language. It was a mess. It was Lyra and I. And, the thing is, you have to be selfish in a way at times to protect your mental health, so you can deliver better quality when you actually do it. And Lyra was only 2. So I can talk from experience that it works. And kids are never too young to learn to empathize.
Okay, so gonna Tim, unless you want to interject here before we switch subjects a bit, because I think what's happened, if we look at the title of the show and everything else, we've pretty much spoke about as parents, but we have to respect the viewers that don't have children, and they were coming here for us to talk about. I've put Tim Patel and Kat to join the show to discuss a mix of Tim's knowledge of the science behind sleep and nutritional fads and clinical background, mental health, and the performance held by Kata. So it'd be nice to switch it up for the other part of the audience that don't have children and what we can give them today. So let's talk some nutrition for parents. We've covered keto, Tim, and stuff. I know you haven't tuned into all the shows. Give us a couple of standout things, like really low-hanging fruit stuff in terms of nutrition for sellers now on lockdown or, partial lockdown.
If I had to give you 2 bits of advice, it would be what you eat and especially when you eat it. Because what you eat, I've been very interested in microbiome science for the last decade or so. And that's really been a game changer for medicine. And so in terms of what you eat, anything I truly believe that's made in a factory, we shouldn't really be eating. Now, that's not possible for almost everyone, including me. Look in my cupboards, there's stuff that's come out of a factory. But the majority of the food I put in my mouth is real food. It's real organic meat, it's real organic vegetables, mostly plant-based, almost all plant-based, because nutrition it's information. Every single thing we put in our mouth goes into our gut. Our gut senses exactly what's going on in the outside world. In terms of our gut, it's just where the immune system sits, and that immune system, if what's going into your gut is nourishing food rather than satiating food, so instead of that bar of chocolate, which is nice, and I've just had one, but I think whole real food is super important. But as well as that, it's when you eat it. So I know a lot of people talk about intermittent fasting or time restricted fasting, but the science behind time restricted eating is enormous, and you can't hide it. You can't hide away from it. And so people talk about 10-hour windows, 8-hour windows, and I'm a true believer in the science of eating within an 8 to 10-hour window and doing that almost every single day, because we evolved that way. And our biological rhythms that have evolved for millions of years, we can't fight them. And when we do fight them, we pay a price, and we're paying a massive price in healthcare right now. And there are so many studies that have proven beyond a shadow of a doubt what happens when you eat all day long, and what happens when you eat within a small time window. And so on a high level basis, without going deep into the science, those are the two things I would do.
Yeah. Kat?
Yeah, gut health is a very big topic in my family, because my husband suffers from Lyme disease, and I myself suffer from pernicious anemia. So I have a B12 deficiency that I can't just take a supplement and be done with it. So inflammatory disease and gut health and all of that, it's been a very recurrent topic. Now we're lucky enough. And at the same time, it's unfortunate, but we're lucky enough to be able to afford to have such rare, illnesses that can flare up, and we can still afford to spend the morning in bed or just to have a bit of a slower day. But 100%, I personally have seen benefits of intermittent fasting. Just makes you sharper. There is just no doubt on that. Now, it's hard to follow, especially when you are in the current situation where life is just happening all together, and you have that massive psychological need for something to supplement what you're lacking of, whether it's social interaction or people watching or just going places and having a sense of normalcy. But yeah, I think that's very important. It's not, I don't think it's coincidental that it's called the second brain, gut I'm talking about. And in business, what do you do without one, right? Let alone with two. And a lot of people within this world suffer from autoimmune diseases. And
Same as me, yeah.
Again, yeah.
Yeah.
And we're lucky enough to, be able to have 4 options.
Go on, sorry.
I'm interested in what you were going to say, Danny, because you not often speak about what you go through, which is a lot. And I know that you will agree with us on this.
Yeah, I mean, it's a massive part of my life, and I make it work, and I'm constantly have to change things to do that. Like, I have an intermittent fast for a while, but I have reintroduced meat. I was vegan for a period, or eating a vegan. I've never been a vegan, so let me be clear on that. And that's not to offend vegans. The dietary choices come through to restriction of brain fog, so that I'm at my maximum performance where I can possible. I went for another bout of brain fog for about an 8-week run where I was working physically for 2 hours a day, but luckily I got teams and stuff. But I've now reintroduced meat. I use, I think it's called Eversfield, and I get it sent in on a weekly basis, all grass-fed meats and poultry, which would be free range as well. And I go to the farm shop every 5 days to stock up on vegetables. And that has made a big difference reintroducing for me the meat. I mean, not everyone's going to agree on that, but it goes back to the thing that Tim's saying earlier about being satiated. I found that when I was eating vegan, I'd eat a lot more to compensate. Now that I'm eating meat, I've since I returned back to meat, it's smaller cuts I'm eating, but it's much nicer. And I find that I eat a lot less, and I've had to adjust my sleeping patterns again to accommodate the maximum for my day. So I wake up without fail 4:30 every day. But now I get up, I have some protein, and then I go back to sleep for a couple of hours, and then I do the rest of my day. So it's a constant adjustment to find and get to the best performance possible, but it's never perfect. So yeah, that's my long short answer of what you're saying, is that what you have to go through when you have an autoimmune disease.
I think with when you think about autoimmune diseases and all of the different chronic diseases that we have right now, Yeah, almost all of them are stemming from disturbances in the gut.
Yeah.
Because from the simplest sort of scientific level, your gut samples the outside world. Outside that one cell lining of your gut is, most of your immune system. And when your gut is receiving foods that are nourishing and that are nourishing a microbiome, and those bugs inside our gut they're pretty much involved in every single function within our human body. So when they're happy, that immune system are literally sensing everything's okay inside there. When they're not happy, the immune system is sensing that there's something wrong. Now, those bugs will actually regulate our immune system as well. So people talk about a strong immune system and a weak immune system. There's no such thing. There's just a tolerant immune system. And what we need to do is have an immune system that recognizes everything else in the outside world, what's bad, of which there's not very much that's bad, and all the other things that are actually quite good. And that sort of trains and so if you eat good food, it trains your gut to be, and your immune system to be tolerant. So therefore you don't get autoimmune disease, you don't get just allergies to pollen and to common things. And unfortunately that's what's happening in the world right now. We're getting all of these autoimmune type conditions as a result of what we're feeding ourselves and as a result of our lifestyle. So when we're not sleeping particularly well, for example, and we're not allowing our gut to regenerate and heal, that itself is sending signals that that are then causing ourselves to become unwell with autoimmune conditions.
There's two things just want to clarify there with you, Tim, as a doctor, because what you're explaining to a point is gut dysbiosis, where unfortunately there's a mismatch between good and bad bacteria, but you need an essence of both. But obviously you want more good than bad. And from my understanding is the gut has its own circadian rhythm. So part of me waking up at 4 o'clock every morning, every day, it's not that I'm a caveman and going to go fishing and start finding my food like we're going back years and years. It's the fact that I've got gut dysbiosis. There's something wrong with my gut. Therefore, that affects my sleep. And the only way to address that is to go back to, the very, very beginning and focus on the foundations, like the good food, what you put into your body counts. And let's face it, like for me, I'm 45 this year. This is years of getting here. You don't get gut dysbiosis or autoimmune just like overnight. It's a series of habits you previously had. So stuff like this can take its time to get back to where you got to go.
You know what? It can take a long time to get to having a dysbiotic gut, but it doesn't take very long to heal it. It doesn't take in terms of, you could change your nutrition today, and literally within 24 hours, you'd see a massive change in the different bacteria within your gut. And then if you sustain that change nutrition, you'll see they sustain, because bacteria, they multiply every 20-30 minutes or so. So if you imagine 2, 4, 8, do that every single 20 minutes, there are trillions of bacteria in your gut, and they can change rapidly. And even day and night, you have different proportions of bacteria in your gut, depending on day and night, because they're all doing slightly different functions. So if we were to give you a big, massive, red meat and alcohol bingy diet for the next week, loads of cheese, you'd have a distinctively different microbiome next week.
And high in histamine as well. You have histamine to go off the charts.
Most probably, Or if we gave you a big, whole foods, vegetarian diet, you see something completely different, because almost all of the bacteria that we really want, they want to eat fiber. That's what they digest. They digest the fiber that we can't digest, and the byproducts of that digestion is just pure gold. They do
so soluble fiber,
and insoluble fiber.
And
the stuff that we can't digest. That's what they digest.
We pass through as roughage, don't we? Kat, I'd love to bring you in, because you've been sitting there a bit quiet. Sorry, me and Tim have been talking about stuff.
It's fascinating. I was just actually laughing because the last time we had this conversation, we were binging on Prosecco bottles. But all three of us.
Yes.
But, it is very true. But one thing that this brings me to is awareness, and it's obviously my field. But we've heard this. We are educated enough to read about this, to listen to teams, to know what to do. But do we do it? Do we put it to action? And
Not
that's what
always.
brings us up to the awareness that we really need to stop and think, what do I want the most? And then stop the self-pity party. Because if I go on a binge, I know what's going to happen. And then that's not really an illness, is it? That's a self-inflicted pain. Even though we try to do everything, much like I always say when I come into the show, like we need to be aware of what kind of business person we want to become, what kind of business we want to run. And a lot of people focus on the why do I want to do this? Why do I want to do that? Well, how about we change the switch and we start focusing on the what? Because the what actually invites to action. What can I do to accomplish this rather than why do I want to accomplish? Who cares why do I want to accomplish? Whether it's my dream, whether it's my childhood desires, whoever, it doesn't matter. But what am I going to do to actually get there? Like, is it being healthier more important right now, more pressing than, I don't know, having a good time for a few hours or so?
So this is what's going to happen, Kat. Next time we're out on the road and we're at a conference, unless you're having raw pressed vegetables, I'm not letting you anywhere near a bar, and I'm going to remind you of this conversation. Tim, you're going to hold it to that as well. You up for that?
Well,
done.
I said we need to make our own choices. And
look at you praising and backpedaling.
If I make the choice to have a bad day tomorrow, I will let you know.
Okay. So that was Tim.
But
just that's reading between the lines there. That's Prosecco comes out next time round. Yeah.
For sure.
A couple of questions here. So Tiff says, does he have a certain probiotics, prebiotics, etc., that you recommend to take?
Yeah. Real food. So just for people who don't know, a prebiotic is the food that bacteria eat. A probiotic are essentially bacteria that will have some effect on your body when you ingest them.
Yeah.
And so there are pre and probiotics on the shelves that you can buy that are manufactured, but they have tiny amounts of bacteria in them, for example. Whereas in your gut, there are thousands of different strains and trillions of them. And so the idea that you can have 1, 2, or 3 strains of bacteria and have lasting change, I'm not saying that it doesn't work, but at the moment, there's no absolute 100% proof that any of them work. There have been some studies where you can take one strain and it helps your depression, and one strain helps your cognitive function. But if you take it all the way back to most of our evolution, we didn't have to go to a shop to buy a pre or a probiotic. We just ate the food that was around us. We ate the food that was in season, that was growing outside, and we ate it. And we have survived for millions of years to become the dominant species on the planet. And so I personally don't have pre or probiotics. I have real food because that's where bacteria live. They live in that food. But the best sorts of, if you want a real high doses of probiotics, I'd have fermented food. So if you get fermented sort of kimchi and sauerkraut or whatever you want to ferment, pickles, kombucha, kefir, all of those things are packed full of probiotics, and prebiotics, because it's got the vegetables in there at the same time. So that's what I would be doing personally, rather than wasting money on shop bought stuff. And I've bought all that stuff in the past before I knew what I know now. And even in medicine, we used to prescribe them a lot. And even in many conditions now, we're sort of drawing back on some of them now because we're realizing they're not working as much or as well as we thought they did.
Yeah. Cool. We're going to wrap in about 5 minutes. Kat, would you like to add anything here towards the conversation? Obviously, we started off with parents and children, and is there any parting gifts you want to talk about today psychologically for people in lockdown to help improve the performance of their business and themselves, of course?
I will say that yes, the main 2 things that I will definitely recommend and that I'm planning to implement myself, and that brings a little bit of control and normalcy back to my brain, at least, is having a system. whether it's Pomodoro, block working hours and resting and having a clear cut so you can spend time with your family. And the second one is giving yourself and your kids grace. Grace to one, be aware that you are only human and you're going to have limitations and you're going to have good days and bad days and good moments and bad moments, and not always be the perfect business person, not the perfect parent. And also grace to your kids to have the same opportunity and talk about it, communicate.
Makes sense.
That'll be it.
Tim, any parting words?
Well, firstly, thanks for having me on the show, Danny.
You're welcome.
And, I think the last few months have been difficult for everyone. But I think, I think people are moving out. Finally, lockdowns are ending. We're able to get back out into the real world again. And I'll just say, just do your best to connect with human beings. If you can do that one thing, just go out and go and see your friends, speak to your friends, don't text them, spend time with your parents. And I can guarantee that one thing, and that will involve exercising and playing, and it will involve eating as well, and all those fun things that we do. But if you can do it in the company of real people, I think that will benefit most people. Yeah,
and I think in the current climate, this has brought out the best and worst in people, and I think the key thing you can do is be kind to yourself and kind to others.
Absolutely.
And I think that goes a long way
100%.
as well. Yeah.
Sure.
If people want to reach your cat, how do they get in contact?
Kata at titanmembers.com as usual, or here on Facebook. Then you tag me there.
Okay, cool. Tim, if people want to reach out and have a chat with you.
So you could catch me on, and my email is mrtimpatel@gmail.com, or on Facebook. And if any parents out there do have kids who are anxious or they're worried about and they want to speak to me, then I'm more than happy to help.
Thank you very much. Guys, thanks for joining us today. This is going to be the last Mindset Sunday. We're just going to discontinue Sundays now because we're going to do Mindset Monday because I need an extra day off. So we're going to go Monday to Thursday. So as of next week, it's going to be Mindset Monday because, I love this segment of the show and I need to get my Sundays back. I'm going to go from a 5 to a 4 day because we've already done 7 to 5 to new to be down to 4. But I think it's very important. A lot of people have messaged me privately about Mindset Sunday. So I think it's important that it stays, and it rhymes, Mindset Monday. So I'd love to get you guys back on and explore more of the gut biome and other parts of subjects as well, because there's so much we can talk about. It's fascinating. Yeah, sure. And I'm sure a lot of the brands and sellers listening will enjoy it. So I'll see you guys back here tomorrow, 4 p.m. BST time. Take care. I'll see you soon.